I'm sitting here staring at this piece of paper, and I've read it maybe 20 times now. The handwriting is my mother's, that perfect cursive she's so proud of, but the words feel like they're written in a foreign language. Wedding's off. Expect a call from my lawyer. That's it. No explanation. No phone call. No face-to-face conversation. Just a note left on my kitchen counter, like I'm some random roommate they're evicting. My name is Madison Chen, and in exactly 14 days, I was supposed to marry the love of my life. The venue is booked, the flowers are ordered, my dress is hanging in my closet, the one I saved for 8 months to buy because, of course, my parents said wedding dresses were the bride's responsibility. 300 guests have flights booked. My maid of honor flew in from Seattle yesterday, and now this. I'm holding this note with hands that won't stop shaking, and all I can think is, after everything I've done for them, this is how it ends? But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up, because this story doesn't start with a note. It starts with a pattern that's been playing out my entire life, a pattern I was too blind or maybe too hopeful to see. I was 12 when I first realized I wasn't like my sister Emma. It was my birthday, July 15th, and I woke up to an empty house. No decorations, no cake, no happy birthday Madison echoing through the hallways. Just silence. I found another note that day, same handwriting. Gone to Disneyland with Emma for her early birthday celebration, back Sunday, order pizza with the emergency credit card. Emma's birthday wasn't until October. I spent my 12th birthday alone, eating delivery pizza and watching other families on TV, wondering what I had done wrong. When they came back 3 days later, my mother looked at me with genuine surprise and said, "Oh, honey, we completely forgot, but look what we brought you," and handed me a Mickey Mouse keychain. Emma got a new MacBook for her early birthday celebration. At 16, it was graduation day. I was valedictorian, something I'd worked my arse off for, staying up until 2 a.m. every night, joining every honor society, taking every AP class available. I wanted them to be proud. I needed them to be proud. I scanned the auditorium as they called my name. Row after row of parents cheering, cameras flashing, families celebrating their kids' achievements. My parents' seats were empty. I gave my valedictorian speech to a crowd of strangers talking about family support and unconditional love while my parents were at Emma's college orientation. 6 hours away for a school she wouldn't even end up attending. "We're so sorry we missed it, sweetie," Mom said when I got home, not looking up from her phone. "But Emma needed us. You understand, right? You're so independent. You don't need us there to succeed." Independent. That's what they called it. What I was learning to call it was abandonment. By 18, the pattern was crystal clear, but I was still stupid enough to hope. College tuition bills started rolling in, and I knew other families saved for their kids' education. I'd heard my friends talking about college funds and 529 plans. "Mum, about tuition." "Oh, Madison, you're so smart. You'll figure it out. We already spent Emma's college fund on her education. You understand." I took out $60,000 in student loans. Emma graduated debt-free. But here's the thing about patterns. Sometimes you don't see them clearly until you're 30 years old, sitting in your own apartment, holding a note that's about to destroy the most important day of your life. The irony is that over the past 5 years, I've been the one keeping this family afloat. After college, I became the chief financial officer of my parents' struggling consulting firm. They hired me because, as Dad put it, we can trust family, and we don't have to pay family as much. When COVID hit in 2020, their business was hemorrhaging money. Clients were cancelling contracts, expenses were piling up, and my parents were talking about bankruptcy. I worked 18-hour days, restructured their entire business model, brought in new clients, and personally guaranteed a business loan with my own credit. I saved their company. I increased their revenue by 300%. I turned their failing consultancy into a thriving business. My reward? Being told I was just doing my job and family helps family. Meanwhile, Emma, who works part-time at a yoga studio, gets her rent paid every month because artistic souls need support to flourish. When James proposed 8 months ago, I was over the moon. Finally, someone who chose me first, someone who saw my value, someone who wanted to build a life with me. I wanted this wedding to be perfect, not expensive, perfect, meaningful. A celebration of two people who actually loved each other. I opened a joint account with my parents specifically for wedding expenses and deposited $85,000. My entire savings from 5 years of working 60-hour weeks. I thought naively that if I funded everything myself, I'd get to make my own decisions. I was wrong. Every single choice became a battle. My mother changed the venue without asking me because she knew someone at a country club I'd never heard of. She altered the menu to include foods I'm allergic to because guests expect certain standards. She invited people I'd never met while cutting my college friends from the list because we were over budget. The breaking point came 2 weeks ago. I was going through the final guest list when I saw a name that made my blood freeze. Derek Morrison. Derek Morrison. My ex-boyfriend from college, the one who cheated on me with my roommate, the one whose betrayal sent me into therapy for 2 years. Mum, why is Derek Morrison on our guest list? Oh, honey, his mother and I thought it would be nice for him to see how well you've done for yourself. He'll see what he missed out on. You invited my ex-boyfriend to my wedding to make him jealous. Don't be dramatic, Madison. It's strategic. Show him you won. That's when I realized this wasn't my wedding. This was their show, their social event, their opportunity to display their version of success. I was just the prop in their performance. I tried to talk to them. I tried to explain that this was supposed to be about James and me starting our life together. I tried to set boundaries. If you want to have any say in this wedding, my father said, his voice cold in a way that still makes my stomach clench, you'll remember who's allowing you to have it in the first place. Allowing me to have my own wedding with my own money. I should have seen the note coming. Yesterday morning, I went to their house to try one more time. I wanted to sit down like adults and figure out how to make this work. The house was empty. Their cars were gone. I used my key, a key I'd had since high school before I learned I wasn't really family, and found the house completely quiet. I walked into the kitchen, and there it was, propped against the coffee maker like some casual reminder to pick up milk. Weddings off. Expect a call from my lawyer. No signature, no explanation, no phone number to reach them. I called, straight to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. I tried their work phones. Nothing. That evening, James came over and found me still sitting at my kitchen table, staring at that note. Maybe we should postpone, he said quietly. Give them time to cool down. Work things out. And that's when it hit me. Even James, the man who loves me, who chose me, even he was suggesting I chase after people who had just abandoned me at the altar. I looked at him and I saw my future stretching out ahead of me. Years of keeping the peace. Years of being grateful for scraps of attention. Years of funding family events where I'd be treated like hired help. Years of apologizing for having needs and boundaries. No, I said. No? I'm not postponing. I'm not chasing them. I'm not begging them to come back. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about every birthday they'd missed, every achievement they'd dismissed, every time they'd made me feel like I was asking for too much by wanting to be treated like their daughter. I thought about the $85,000 sitting in that joint account. Money I'd earned, money I'd saved, money that represented 5 years of sacrificing my own happiness to build their dreams. And I thought about the lawyer they'd threatened me with. By morning, I knew what I had to do. The call came at exactly 9 a.m., like they'd scheduled it in their calendar. "Miss Chen, this is Robert Martinez from Martinez and Associates. I'm calling on behalf of your parents regarding the wedding account dispute." His voice had that practiced intimidation tone that lawyers use when they think they're dealing with someone who'll cave under pressure. "I see," I said calmly. "Your parents would like to resolve this matter quickly and quietly. They're prepared to allow you to keep $20,000 for your trouble, provided you release all claims to the remaining funds." My trouble. Like I was some kind of con artist trying to steal from my own family. "Mr. Martinez, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Have you actually reviewed the account documentation?" A pause. "I'm sure my clients have provided all relevant information." "I'm sure they have. But have you seen the deposit records? The bank statements showing where that money came from?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Miss Chen, I'm sure we can work something out that's beneficial for everyone." "I'm sure we can, Mr. Martinez, but first, let me save you some time. That joint account contains $85,000. Every single dollar came from my personal checking account. I have 5 years of pay stubs, tax returns, and bank records to prove it. Now, what exactly did you say my parents' claim was based on?" The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Miss Chen, perhaps we should schedule a meeting to discuss this in more detail." "Perhaps we should. In the meantime, Mr. Martinez, I think you should know that I'm freezing that account today. And I'll be filing my own claim for the full $85,000, plus damages for the cancelled wedding expenses I'll have to eat because of this stunt." "Miss Chen, I don't think you understand the implications of—" "Oh, I understand perfectly. My parents hired you to intimidate me into giving up money I earned. The problem is, they forgot to mention that I've been their CFO for 5 years. I know exactly how these things work." After I hung up, I sat in my car outside the bank for 10 minutes just breathing. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of my parents' reaction. I walked into the bank, requested to speak with a manager, and explained the situation. Within an hour, I had frozen the account and filed a formal dispute claim. Then I did something I'd never done before. I turned off my phone. For 24 hours, I existed in a bubble of silence. No calls from my parents, no pressure from extended family, no guilt trips about destroying the family, just peace. When I finally turned my phone back on, I had 67 missed calls. The war had begun. 67 missed calls. I stared at my phone screen, watching the notifications scroll by like some kind of digital avalanche. The numbers kept climbing even as I watched. 68, 69, 70. The first voicemail was my mother, her voice tight with the kind of controlled rage I remembered from childhood. "Madison, call us back immediately. We're stuck in Las Vegas because of your little stunt, and this has gone far enough." Las Vegas. Of course they were in Vegas. While I was planning our wedding, their social performance, they were gambling away their problems in the desert. The second voicemail was my father. "You've embarrassed this family enough. Fix this now, or there will be consequences." By the fifth voicemail, they weren't even trying to hide their panic anymore. "The hotel is demanding payment up front. They froze our credit cards. Madison, you're destroying this family." I almost laughed. Almost. Because after 30 years of being told I was the problem, hearing them admit that their entire financial house of cards depended on me was almost satisfying. The texts were even more revealing. Mum, 11:47 p.m. Call us now. Dad, 11:52 p.m. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. Mum, 12:15 a.m. We can't get home. Is that what you want? Dad, 12:33 a.m. Your sister is beside herself. Look what you've done to Emma. Emma. Of course they brought Emma into it. I scrolled through more messages, and there she was, Emma, 1:22 a.m. Madison. What the hell? Mum and Dad are stranded and you're acting like a psycho. Emma, 1:24 a.m. Over a stupid wedding? Grow up. Emma, 1:31 a.m. They said you stole their money. That's literally theft. I set the phone down and made coffee with hands that were surprisingly steady. The morning sun was streaming through my kitchen windows, the same windows where I'd found that note 48 hours ago. It felt like a lifetime. James knocked on my door at 8 a.m., looking like he hadn't slept much either. How bad is it? He asked, nodding toward my phone, which was buzzing again on the counter. Depends on your perspective, I said, pouring him coffee. They're stuck in Vegas. Apparently the bank called them yesterday morning when I froze the account. Turns out they'd already withdrawn $40,000 for their little gambling adventure. James nearly choked on his coffee. 40,000? Madison, that was our honeymoon fund. Our honeymoon fund, the emergency backup for venue changes, and apparently their Vegas bankroll. I sat down across from him. Want to hear the best part? According to the timestamps on these messages, they were at the blackjack tables when I was meeting with the bank manager yesterday. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Madison, don't answer that, James started, but I was already picking up. Madison Chen speaking. Madison, honey, this is your Aunt Carol. I just got off the phone with your mother, and I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Aunt Carol, Mum's sister, the family diplomat who got called in whenever there was drama that needed smoothing over. Hi, Aunt Carol. What kind of misunderstanding? Well, your parents are saying you've locked them out of their wedding account and they're stuck in Nevada. That doesn't sound like the Madison I know. You're right, Aunt Carol. The Madison you know would have already wired them money to get home and apologized for causing trouble. Silence on the other end. But that Madison is gone, I continued. This Madison wants to know why my parents were gambling with my wedding money while threatening me with lawyers. Honey, I'm sure there's an explanation. I'm sure there is too, and when they're ready to give it, they have my number. I hung up. James was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Who are you, and what did you do with my fiancé? I'm the version of me that should have existed 30 years ago. The calls kept coming. Uncle Mike, Cousin Sarah, family friends I hadn't spoken to in years. Each one had gotten the same story from my parents. Madison was being unreasonable over wedding planning. Madison had stolen family money. Madison was destroying the family over petty nonsense. But here's the thing about being the family CFO. I had records. I had documentation. And more importantly, I had 5 years' worth of watching my parents lie to banks, investors, and clients about their financial situation. The bank called at noon. Miss Chen, this is Jennifer Walsh from First National. I wanted to give you an update on your account dispute. Go ahead. We've completed our preliminary review, and I have to say this is pretty cut and dried. The deposits into the joint account all originated from your personal checking account. We have clear documentation going back 8 months. And the withdrawals. There was a $40,000 withdrawal 2 days ago in Las Vegas, Nevada. The withdrawal slip has both your parents' signatures, but given that you were in Chicago at the time and the money was originally yours, what does that mean for my claim? It means you have a very strong case. We'll be contacting the other account holders about returning the disputed funds. After I hung up, I sat in my living room and really looked around for the first time in days. This apartment that I'd worked so hard to afford. The furniture I'd bought piece by piece with overtime money. The life I'd built while my parents took credit for my successes and blamed me for my needs. For the first time in my adult life, I felt something I'd never experienced before. Power. Not the kind of power that comes from hurting people, but the kind that comes from finally standing up for yourself. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized, the law firm. Miss Chen, this is Robert Martinez again. I think we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. Did we? I've had a chance to review the documentation, and it seems there may be some complications with my client's initial claim, such as the fact that the money in question appears to be entirely yours. I let the silence stretch. Miss Chen, my clients are currently facing some financial difficulties in Nevada, and they're hoping we can work out an arrangement. What kind of arrangement? They'd like to request a temporary loan from the disputed account to cover their travel expenses home. In exchange, they're willing to drop their claim to the remaining funds. I actually laughed out loud. Mr. Martinez, let me make sure I understand this correctly. My parents want me to loan them money from my own bank account so they can get home from the gambling trip they took with my wedding money. When you put it like that, is there another way to put it? Another long pause. Miss Chen, what would it take to resolve this situation? And that's when I realized I held all the cards. Not just financially, but emotionally. For the first time in my life, they needed me more than I needed them. Full repayment of the $85,000 plus the additional expenses I'm incurring because of their stunt. A written apology to James and our wedding party for the chaos they've caused. And a formal transfer of company ownership, or I walk away from the business entirely. Miss Chen, that seems... Those are my terms, Mr. Martinez. They have 48 hours to decide. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I cooked dinner for James and myself. Real dinner, not the takeout we'd been living on during wedding planning insanity. We sat at my kitchen table, eating homemade pasta and talking about our future. Are you really going to go through with it? James asked. The company ultimatum. You know what the funny thing is? I've been so focused on trying to earn their love that I never stopped to ask if I actually want it anymore. What do you mean? I mean, look at how they treat people they supposedly love. Look at how they treated me for 30 years. Do I really want to spend the rest of my life walking on eggshells, hoping they'll throw me some scraps of affection? James reached across the table and took my hand. You know I'll support whatever you decide, right? Even if it means eloping to Vegas and starting over somewhere new? He grinned, especially if it means that. The next morning brought a new wave of calls, but this time the tone was different. Desperate instead of angry, pleading instead of demanding. Madison, please, we're family. Mum's voice was small in a way I'd never heard before. We made mistakes, but we can fix this. Don't throw away 30 years over money. 30 years, she was right about that. 30 years of being treated like a convenience. 30 years of being blamed for wanting basic respect. 30 years of being told I was too sensitive, too demanding, too much. Dad's message was shorter. We're driving home from Vegas. We need to talk. Emma's was the most telling. Madison, I'm scared. They've been crying for 2 days. Whatever you're doing, it's working. So please just fix it. I don't know how to handle them like this. For the first time in our lives, Emma was seeing our parents as I'd always seen them, flawed, manipulative people who fell apart when they couldn't control the narrative. They arrived at my apartment that evening, looking smaller somehow. Dad's hair was messy, Mum's makeup was smudged, and both of them looked like they'd aged 5 years in 3 days. "Madison," Mum started, but I held up my hand. "I'll talk. You'll listen. For once in my life, that's how this is going to work." They sat on my couch like scolded children. "You want to know what the real tragedy is here? It's not the wedding you cancelled. It's not even the money you stole. It's that you had a daughter who would have done anything for you, and you decided that wasn't enough." Mum opened her mouth to protest, but I continued. "I saved your business. I've worked 60-hour weeks for 5 years to build your dream. I've paid for family dinners, birthday parties, Christmas gifts. I've been your ATM, your accountant, your emotional punching bag, and your scapegoat. Honey, we never meant—" "Yes, you did. You meant all of it. Every dismissal, every comparison to Emma, every time you made me feel grateful for scraps. You meant to keep me small and grateful and available." Dad finally spoke. "What do you want from us, Madison?" "I want you to leave." They stared at me. "I want you to go home. Think about the kind of parents you've been for 30 years and decide if you want to do better. Not because you need me, but because you love me." "We do love you," Mum whispered. "No, you love what I do for you. There's a difference." After they left, I sat in my apartment and felt something I hadn't experienced since I was 12 years old. Silence that didn't feel empty. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Instead of reviewing spreadsheets and fixing my parents' latest financial mess, I went wedding dress shopping with my maid of honor. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked, as I tried on a simple, elegant dress that cost a quarter of what my original dress had cost. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." "Even without your family there?" I looked at myself in the mirror. For the first time, I looked like a bride who was marrying someone because she wanted to, not because she was trying to prove something. "Sarah, the people who love me will be there. That's all the family I need." That afternoon, I submitted my resignation to the company. 2 weeks' notice, professional and clean. I also called a headhunter I'd been in touch with 6 months ago, back when I daydreamed about leaving but never had the courage. "Madison, I'm so glad you called. That position with Morrison Industries is still open. They've been looking for someone with your exact background." Morrison Industries, a competitor that had been trying to poach me for 2 years. "What kind of salary are we talking about?" "They're offering a $140,000 base plus performance bonuses, 40% increase from your current position." I almost dropped the phone. I'd been working for $70,000 a year while managing a business that I'd grown to over $2 million in annual revenue. When can I start? 3 days later, I got a text from my mother. "We're sorry. We want to try to do better. Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me, the 12-year-old who spent her birthday alone, the 16-year-old who gave a speech to empty seats, the woman who'd spent 30 years believing she wasn't enough, wanted to run back to them. But the woman who'd frozen that bank account, who'd stood up to their lawyer, who'd walked away from a business she'd built with her own hands, knew better. I typed back, "I'm open to conversation when you're ready to have it without conditions, ultimatums, or blame. Until then, I'm building a life with people who choose me first." 2 weeks later, James and I got married in my best friend's backyard. 25 people who actually loved us, a justice of the peace who'd known Sarah's family for years, and a cake from the bakery down the street. My parents didn't come. Emma didn't come. Most of my extended family didn't come, and it was perfect. As James and I danced to music playing from someone's iPhone speaker, I realized something that took 30 years to understand. Being alone with people who love you is infinitely better than being surrounded by people who don't. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the wedding photos on Sarah's Instagram. You looked beautiful, proud of you for choosing happiness. Aunt Carol. Maybe some family is worth keeping after all. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't desperate for their approval. I was complete with or without it. And that, I realized, was what freedom actually felt like. The next morning, I woke up as Mrs. Madison Turner, in my own apartment, next to a man who chose me first every single day. My phone had 3 missed calls from my parents. I smiled and turned it off. Some conversations could wait until I was ready to have them from a position of strength rather than need. After 30 years of chasing love that always seemed just out of reach, I'd finally learned the most important lesson of all. The only approval I really needed was my own.